And again, listen, I've got a background in business, but I also have a background in psychology. So I love why people kind of do what they do. And I love positive reinforcement and I love meditations and everything else. And really what you're doing is you're allowing people spirit to stay alive through some of these things that you're doing.
It's kind of
it's a greater, oh gosh, forget whatever the heck I was going to say. Let's go with that.
Welcome to the Ill Noise Business Playbook. We sit down with people building real impact in their communities and unpack the vision behind their work. If you care about real stories and real connection, you're in the right place. Let's make some noise.
Hey, welcome to the Ill Noise Business Playbook. I am here with Brandy from Penny Lane Quilted Memories. Brandy, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I just saw you a couple of days ago when we went out in the field and got to see you live. So that was actually kind of nice. Got to see a lot of your products and stuff. So definitely want the audience to find out about your business. But before they find out about your business, I think it's really always imperative for people to kind of find out about the person behind the business. So I know that you grew up in an area that I'm a little accustomed to. Where exactly did you grow up?
Schaumburg. So lived in Schaumburg, graduated from Schaumburg High School many years ago. So that's kind of primarily, where I grew up at. My family's, from the South. So, Tennessee, Indiana area. So I do spend I did spend my summers in Tennessee.
Nice.
Up until I was about 20, 21-ish before my nanny passed away. So I would still go visit my family.
Nice. Well, we used, Neha and I actually lived right off of Algonquin and Skywater. We lived in an apartment complex over there in Schaumburg I lived there for a few years for myself, and then we got together, we lived together, and then we kind of moved down. But I've always been a big fan of Schaumburg. We're still part of the Schaumburg Business Association. I guess I can't let it go. I think it's a really kind of a cool little area and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, when you said you went to high school out there, what about past high school experience? Any educational experience after that?
Yeah, so I did Harper College route type thing. Went and I've struggled in math. Believe it or not, my past background, I am in accounting, but I guess you need all this math. So math just kind of held me up a little bit. So kind of stopped, and I worked for a golf manufacturer for a long time. I call it my past life. I was with the company for 13-ish or so years.
Okay.
And then, things just kind of led me to a different path. So, and then, here I am now doing my business full time.
Well,
loving every minute of it.
Let's dive into that then, if we can. Now, I will admit we don't have a lot of people that quilt on our show here, which is great, right? And it harbors just the word quilt, harbors all these beautiful feelings from me of past family members that are no longer with me anymore, specifically my grandparents and stuff.
Get that all the time.
Yeah, but that's good though, right? If you're doing something that brings positive connotations to folks, they're going to want to be part of that, right?
Right.
But what inspired you to kind of leave the? I guess you're working in the accounts receivable. You're doing that sort of stuff. You're doing this accounting stuff, and obviously you're not doing accounting anymore. So, what was the moment where you kind of just decided, enough is enough? I've got to do something different with my life.
Yeah, a lot of it was COVID, when COVID happened. So, we had to make the decision on who was going to work. And, my husband at the time, his job was we are very fortunate. And I just, we moved out here to Huntley in 2021, and I did my first farmer's market. And I looked over at my mom and I'm like, people like my stuff. Like, it was crazy. And so it just took off from there. Just doing farmers markets, keeping my name, keeping my face out there. And then I started getting busier, and we were like, let's give this a try while we can. And I've been doing it now full time, going on my 4th year. So Yeah, it's crazy. And I honestly get to say I every day I get to do what I love. I wake up,
That's
I take my son to school, and I come home and I work, and I love it. I love every minute of it.
so I've got a couple questions with that for what you've said.
Mhm.
First off, you are right. Trust me. I was in the corporate world for 20 plus years, and to be able to do this now and to do it with my wife,
Right,
obviously, it's when you can do something you love.
right.
It every day I wake up, I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. This is awesome,
I
right?
can't like don't take it away from me, not yet.
No, 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 no. Let me keep doing
Yeah,
this. Let me keep meeting
yeah.
more Brandys of the world that I can interview, right? Um, but I gotta ask because I am a music fan. Are you a fan of the Beatles?
So I get that all the time. And so Penny Lane has nothing to do with the Beatles.
Okay.
So I just recently did a rebranding of my business. So
Okay.
that was about a year ago, actually. Like February, March is when I did the rebranding. So
Okay.
I'm formally known as Piece of Me Quilts. And
Okay.
peace is spelled like the peace symbol.
Okay.
So when I moved out here in 2021, I kept having to say it's peace like the peace symbol, not like a piece of pie. And I felt like a lot of people were not being able to search me properly because they weren't spelling it correctly.
Okay.
And so, as much as I love Piece of Me Quilts, I'm very intentional. I'm very passionate. Everything has intention behind what I do. And so the name Penny Lane Quilted Memories came from my love of pennies. I
No.
actually love, love, love pennies. And I feel like it's almost a family thing because
Mm.
I have all of my family's like heirlooms. And
Okay.
every time I open up something, there's always a penny inside of it.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
yeah, so I love pennies. I save all the pennies that I find. If I find one that's tails up, I turn it over for heads up for the next person to have good luck. If I
Oh,
pay cash at a register, I always leave a penny on the counter.
oh,
So
that's so
that's
cool.
where the penny comes
I love
from.
it.
And then Lane is actually my nanny and papa's, my grandma and grandpa's last name. So
Oh,
my
okay.
mom's maiden name is Lane.
Okay.
And so in my logo, Penny Lane, Lane is actually my nanny's handwriting. So,
Wow.
um,
It's beautiful.
yeah. So my graphic designer had made, I don't know what mimicked all of the letters
Sure.
to spell out Penny Lane Quilted Memories in my nanny's handwriting.
Oh,
So
man.
they were a big part of my life. I know they would be super proud of me right now.
Mm.
And then Quilted Memories is because I'm a quilter and then I specialize in memories. So that is Penny Lane Quilted Memories.
That is such a beauty. There's so many extensions of that are so sweet.
Yes.
That I love
But the,
so
the
much.
Beatles the Beatles song plays in my favor because now everybody remembers it.
Well, and
So
then, I mean, I think they were all about love and peace too. So you kind of you
yeah,
kind of are sticking to that in that frame
yeah,
of mind.
right.
Where did you learn this? Like, when did this actually? I mean, I learned how to crochet many moons ago.
Yes.
Yeah, so I could say I can do that. But it was different. I was working in the not-for-profit sector, so on and so forth, and figured that one out. But where the heck did you learn how to do this?
So I am a first generation self-taught quilter. So I taught myself everything that I know.
Oh,
There's not a person in my family that quilts. So my
really?
mom bought me my first sewing machine when I was 17,
Okay.
a couple years ago. And she's like, I don't even know why I bought this. And I, was kind of like, why did you get me a sewing machine, mom?
That's right.
And so it sat for, maybe like 6 months,
Okay.
maybe. And I picked it up and I was like, okay, let's do this. I did home ec. You remember we
Oh,
used to have home ec?
yes,
Yeah.
I do. Of
And
course.
yes, so I did kind of get the little spark, of like, oh, this is cool,
Right.
in home ec class. And so I took all of my family's jeans and I cut them up into squares. and I sewed them together,
That is so
and I
cool.
called it my Gene quilt, Gene quilt.
Okay.
And I still have it to this day. Yeah. And my very first quilt I made, and I got a rush, and I was like, I made that. And
That is so cool.
I was hooked ever since. And now we're talking, the internet really wasn't around, so it was just trial and error and just making mistakes and honing in on different, craft, different sewing techniques.
Sure.
And, like if you ask an older sewer, they may not agree with how things that I do, because they were taught a certain way, but
Absolutely.
I didn't have that.
Right.
So and now I've been doing it for almost 30 years, and I restore people's heirloom quilts.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
confident to do that.
Love it.
I specialize in the keepsakes. I cut people's shirts pretty much for a living. And yeah, it's great. I can look at something. I don't need a pattern anymore. I can kind of just wing it.
So that was actually really important. So even when we're not running this business, you were still doing this stuff. Like this was
Correct.
So
Yep.
this is complete and utter passion project for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So so prior to doing the t-shirt quilt, so I started doing the t-shirt quilts in 2015
Okay.
When my stepbrother was diagnosed with cancer.
Ah.
So he had asked me if I could make a t-shirt quilt. Now, mind you, I have been quilting for such a long time. I
Right.
had no idea what he was talking about. So
Sure.
I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out.
Right.
And so Kyle, my stepbrother, his was the very first memory quilt that I made. Sadly, we lost him in 2016,
Sorry to hear that.
and so he's the reason I am so passionate about this. If my gift, my craft, my skill, my love that I do every day can give somebody comfort in a hard time, I mean that means more to me than anything. So as long as the good Lord keeps my eyes and I wake up every day, I'm going to do this. So I absolutely love it.
And he was able to get that quilt?
Yes, yeah.
Boy.
So sadly, he passed away with it, and so since then, I have made. This one behind me has some
Yep.
of my brother's shirts in there,
Okay.
but also my mom's and stepdad's shirts are in there. The quilt that comes with me to every single market that I do is one of my brothers.
Oh, that's
So.
beautiful.
And then my stepdad has one that hangs in their house in Schaumburg. And then my nephew has one, or I'm sorry, my niece has one.
Okay.
And then my other stepbrother has the one that I made for Kyle. So
Who's the Harley guy in the family?
so my entire family.
Is that
So
right?
Kyle, yeah, was actually a shop manager at Heritage Harley in Lisle.
Okay.
So
I used to live in Woodridge. So my friends and I
right.
would go to that
Yeah.
Harley shop. Yes, for sure.
So Kyle was the shop manager there, and
That's cool.
so my stepdad, they ride. My father no longer rides anymore, but he used to.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
So yeah.
That
So
is
the family.
That is so dope. What sort of challenges do you find by being in this industry?
I think now with doing the memory quilts, is making sure that I stand out, with it's becoming more and more common, for people picking up and, starting to sew or starting to do, a craft like this. So,
Sure.
I would say the biggest challenge is just making sure that one, people know my story and my passion behind it,
Yep.
but, kind of, staying ahead, not ahead of the game, but because if anybody's creating, I think that's awesome.
Agreed.
And I don't want to ever knock anybody's creation.
Right.
But, just making sure, that people know my story behind it, my passion behind it. I've made over 250 of them. So I'm very experienced and, just keeping my face out there and not being lost behind the sewing machine.
We're going to talk about ways that you generate business, but what I think is really important is that when Neha and myself visited you and saw you in the field, you did something that I think is amazing that people that run businesses should do, and you showed a lot of integrity and a lot of being ethical, and I'll show you why. Because Neha certainly had her eyes on a little stuffed animal that was maybe a couple more dollars than I would wish to spend. And you did such a wonderful job of sort of quantifying why that actually wasn't probably a good fit for us based on cost. And I'll tell you, people like you are people that I want to deal with. And I'm sure people that are watching this want to deal with too. That was really impressive. It's pretty easy just to tell people like, oh yeah, what's the best option for me? The most expensive option here, right? But
no, sir.
You did the exact opposite, and I really love that. But we saw you in an event, okay? And so my question to you is that something that you typically do to try to increase your customer base? Are you typically at those festivals? Are you typically at those different events? And
Yep. So Huntley is always going to have my heart because that's where I pretty much, started all of the memory quilts. So I would, since 2015, we should say 2016, I would maybe make like 3 a year, maybe 3 a year. And then when we moved out here to Huntley and I did that first farmer's market, it was towards the end of the season. So it was like October-ish. And a lot of interest about my quilts, a quilt behind me. And then that next year, 2022, I was in like the 20s. I maybe made like 20 memory quilts. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And then 2023, I was in the 60s.
Oh, nice.
And then 2024, I was in the 80s. And then last year, I had a goal to do 100 and I didn't get there. So I beat my 2024. So I did 87 last year. So making sure that I stay, because, people, they're not ready. And especially if we're doing a memory quilt, it does take people's, time to be ready to give me their loved ones, clothing.
Of course.
And now with the memory quilts, I do them across the board, if it's of a child's, football, journey or baseball journey, those are different from a loved one, and so they're not ready yet. I think they need to talk to me more and build that trust a little bit more with me, because I only get one cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't like, oopsies, I messed up, let me go get another shirt. So staying present and staying vocal and showing up to the markets and, kind of expanding a little bit. Because again, with that, people, they don't want to ship their shirts to me because the risk of losing them in the mail.
Of course.
And so I did do in the beginning a lot of the farmers markets. And now that my business has gained momentum, I'm pretty much all word of mouth. And, I can tell when somebody posts something because my messages start going off. I start getting more following. My algorithm goes up a little bit.
Sure.
And so, they may not be ready in March, but they're going to be ready in October, and making sure that they still see me and know that I'm still here, I think is important. So.
Yeah, it doesn't really sound like it sounds like it's something that people kind of have to see a few times, kind of get to know you a few times, kind of feel comfortable a few times and stuff. But I think though that those then people purchasing those things are going to be much more content with those things because they've given themselves time to actually think things through and to process it, and make sure that you're doing the right thing. As far as the industry, you're self-taught. How do you kind of stay up to date with any sort of changes in the industry that you're dealing with right now? Because I'm sure you probably, Brandy, you've been doing this for 30 years. So I'm sure in the last 30 years, you've seen some differences in the industry. So how do you kind of stay up to date and stay ahead of those trends?
So right now, the biggest is just the quality of product that I need to make sure that I'm giving to people. I'm known for my quality. So it's just one, making sure that I'm still giving the best quality of, the materials that I do provide, because that has changed a lot. Quality has just kind of gone down. So that, and
Okay.
then the style of how memory quilts now are being made. There's many different styles that you can make them. I know it's really kind of hard to see with the one behind me, but there is a border that goes around each one of the shirts. I particularly like that style because it reminds me of a quilt. A lot of people, they do what they call a mosaic style of quilting, where there's no seams intersecting. It's all just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And I particularly, I don't like that style. um I of course I will do it for customers if they do want that style. It is a little bit more money because there's a little bit more math that's involved. um yeah. But
Bring it back to that method that you love so
I
much,
tell
right?
you, you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so honestly, it's just really the quality. Yeah, the quality of the
Um,
material.
and okay, so how are you able to kind of, obviously with everything changing and with it now being more expensive to get higher quality, like how are you able to kind of still keep costs at a cost effective price that still kind of brings people to come back for more?
Joe, those are the secrets of the trades.
Okay.
Do I
You don't need
indulge
to
my,
give,
do I tell my secrets? I
you
don't
don't have,
know.
you don't have to if you don't want to. Um, I think that's again. I absolutely love what you're doing. I'm thinking right now, boy, I've got some
Right,
keepsakes from family members that are no longer with
right.
us that I need to get and stuff like
Well,
that.
they're in good hands. I promise you that.
Yeah. Well, and again, I met you, so I feel very comfortable that that's the case, especially when you pushed us away from that teddy bear,
Right.
so that you're going to stay aces in my book for that, Brandy. Um, now by doing that, it's such a sweet thing you're doing. And again, listen, I've got a background in business, but I also have a background in psychology.
Mhm,
So I really just love why people kind of do what they do. And I love positive
mhm,
reinforcement and I love
mhm.
meditations and everything else. And really what you're doing is you're allowing people spirit to stay alive through some of these things that you're doing.
It's a
It's
handmade
kind of
hug.
it's a greater, oh gosh, forget the whatever the heck I was going to say. Let's go with that. um, Can you, and I'm sure you have so many, Brandy. So if you got two stories or what, I'll be fine with that. But can you think back to somebody that you were able to help out that still to this day just puts a big old smile on your face where you kind of like can confirm this passion I have is really a purpose. And this is really kind of something larger than I think I initially thought it might be.
Right. Yes. So, I do have, my dad was in the Air Force. Yes. So I was actually born on base. And,
Thank him. Yeah,
yes, I definitely will. And he would love that. So
please do.
I was actually born on base. And so I have a big passion for our men and women in our armed service. I teach my son that we respect everybody, that when we see in a veteran's hat or we see in a uniform, we will shake their hand and we will always say thank you. So I was honored enough to do a veteran of shirts, and sadly, um, the PTSD, he sadly took his own life. So that one really hit home, doing that one. So knowing that he gave us his ultimate sacrifice, and in return, it was just too heavy for him to handle. So I know that those quilts that I made that family, for his son, for his mom, for his sister, And then I did actually make an extra one for that family just out of the pieces that I had left over. I know that's the reason why I will always, always do what I do. Always.
It is absolutely beautiful, Brandy. It's absolutely. Yeah, my father was in the military as well, and he taught us all.
Yes.
My brother and I do the same thing that you're teaching your son, and I think that, and to be honest, I sort of extend that out too. I walk up to firefighters, police officers, anyone that's kind of throwing their life on the line to create safer spaces for us all.
Right.
I think you should really be proud of how you're mothering your child to kind of make sure that you're doing those sort of things. It's a really beautiful thing for sure. Where are you going to be at next, Brandy? Where can Neha and I maybe come see you?
I'm going back to high school.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that at social media, and that was kind of cracking me up. Let's talk about that. What's this school event you're doing? And are you going to the principal's office too, Brandy, or what?
I don't know. Let's hope they don't remember me. You know what? Honestly, I'm such an introvert that they probably are like, who?
What's this high school event all about?
So it's the Schaumburg High School. So the boosters are throwing a craft fair. And this is the first time that I've been there. So I've done other high school events in the past, but this is the first time I've been back at high school since '99. So,
my goodness.
I know.
That's you've got. I've got more years than you, so it's been a while. But I went to Downers Grove South High Schools where I actually attended back in my day, and I drove past there a few years back, and it just, well, first off, it looks completely different, which is very. But secondly, it certainly conjured up all those old memories, right?
I know.
Navigating through school and what that was all about. And now that I'm in my 50s, boy, I know you're much younger than me, but you just said graduated high school, so we can. So you're in your 40s. You threw that out there, unless you're like Doogie Howser. You ended up graduating high school like 8 or something. But I'm sure that's gonna be a cool little run for you to kind of go back down memory lane.
Yeah,
so that'll be nice.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Brandy, I really, I'm really thankful that you were able to sit down with us today. You started, you kind of talked about this before, where you were referencing algorithms when you were saying like people putting up things out there, and it was kind of affecting algorithms. And that's kind of how we've sort of built what we're doing here with the Ill Noise, is about algorithms. And a big key to that is to have our people that are either past guests, or future guests, to kind of help us with that. And you've done such a wonderful job with us of liking things and loving things and all that fun stuff. And it doesn't just end there. We'll certainly do the same for you, and you'll see that it'll continue being. When you have things, we'll like, and we'll comment, we'll share, we'll try to be out there. But I really just think it's a really beautiful, beautiful thing that you're doing. And I love the fact, again, I think when we can if all of us in this world can try to figure out ways that we can match our passion with our purpose, I think that we can all live better lives. And you're living proof of that right now, Brandy, because you're doing it. So just thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for the smiles. Thanks for the laughter. Thanks for the honesty. And I hope you had as good of as much fun on here as I had with you. I hope you had
Yes.
Awesome. Well, you have yourself a great time. We will see you again in the near future. Okay. And keep smiling. Okay, ready?
Thanks, Joe.